Hi, I'm Julia Keutgen. I'm the Senior Transparency Advisor at the Westminster Foundation for Democracy. So WFD, in collaboration with My Society, has recently launched a report entitled Connected Parliaments. So in this report, we explain why now, more than ever, digital transformation has become essential for parliaments and what it takes for parliaments to engage in this endeavor. We also talk about the significance impact of using technology to leverage greater public interest. In times of deepening crisis in democracy and citizens' lack of trust in democratic systems, such engagement beyond the elections is absolutely crucial if the institution of parliament is to survive. So in order to speak more about this, we have invited Rebecca Rumbul to join us today. Rebecca is the head of research at My Society, which is a UK civic tech organization that helps to connect citizens to decision-making through the use of technology. Rebecca has also co-authored the Connected Parliaments report with me. So hi, Rebecca, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Hi there, Julia. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start with this very general question. Why, in your opinion, do you think it's so important for parliaments to use digital means to engage citizens?
Great question, because a lot of parliaments, I think, are a little bit reticent to change. They are mostly historic institutions, and they value a lot of their existing behaviours. But it's 2021 now, and digital is an accessible and versatile medium. Parliaments, I think, more than ever want to show that they are accountable to the people that have democratically elected them. And using digital to communicate with people, to garner their opinions, to promote what work they're doing, I think is absolutely crucial in maintaining the support and the trust of the public. So digital means, I think, are absolutely crucial for that. Without that, people wouldn't really know what's going on in Parliament. People wouldn't be able to hold the Parliament to account. People wouldn't be able to monitor what their politicians are doing in their name. Whereas using digital tools, people can meaningfully interact with Parliament now. So it's not just a case of reading on the news what the Parliament's been doing. Using digital tools, individuals can actually go to their parliaments and say, this is an issue. I think you should look at this more closely. Or you are doing something that I didn't vote for. Why are you doing that? Can you explain it to me? Digital basically provides a great landscape for accountability and opportunity for people to get more involved in parliamentary business.
And so, I mean, when parliaments start to engage more and more, use digital more and more to engage, what would you say that parliaments around the world, how have they been using digital engagement in comparison, for example, to the executives?
So parliaments generate huge amounts of information. It can be a little bit dry, maybe, I think, to just kind of sit there and watch a plenary debate. But you've got to remember that huge numbers of individual politicians are speaking. They are voting on very, very important bits of legislation. They are doing work in committees scrutinising legislation or scrutinising legislation that has already been passed on how it's working. Enormous amounts of really important things are going on in parliaments all of the time. And actually digitizing this information, producing it in digital formats, producing it in open data formats, this enables normal people to access this information, to learn about what's happening, to gain a better understanding, and also, again, to use that data in turn to educate other people or to engage with the Parliament themselves, or indeed to build digital tools. The great thing about how parliaments can do this and can produce all of this data means that, again, citizens can develop that direct line to people in power that doesn't necessarily have to go via the government. Executives are doing a lot of their own digital development work, but those focus very heavily on policy areas that are matters of ideology for the government. Whereas parliaments, for instance, will have members that maybe aren't part of the ruling party, but can raise issues that are just as important to get them on the political agenda. So there's lots and lots of great stuff going on, especially some of the parliaments that are producing open data and are developing their own kind of participatory or engagement tools for citizens.
And so you were saying earlier on, I mean, that parliaments maybe historically have been a little bit more reluctant to go that route. Now, what do you think are some of the main challenges for those parliaments to connect digitally with people?
There are a lot of challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to demonstrate the value of maybe some of the really boring infrastructure things that need to happen in order to actually do really exciting things digitally. It might sound really, really dull to suggest to a parliament that they should reform how they keep records, for instance, digital records and digital archiving. But really good naming conventions done digitally means that when you can publish things online, they are completely searchable by individuals, by historians, by journalists, by international researchers. It massively amplifies the beneficial effect of information when you get some really kind of core basics right. So things like doing really good digital infrastructure internally builds like really solid foundations for being able to build really great tools and provide really high quality information to citizens. So that's one of the big barriers, is trying to get the basics in place. I think the other thing that really concerns me at the moment is an over-reliance on social media. And I think it's something that is talked about a little bit, but maybe not enough in terms of how reliant an awful lot of parliaments are on using Facebook or Twitter maybe to publish their own information. I realize that social media is incredibly easy for people to access, and it definitely has a place for promoting parliamentary business. But a Facebook page is absolutely not a good substitute for a good website or a good open data portal. You are essentially surrendering your independence to a private commercial organization in another country if you are relying on Facebook to be your one and only kind of internet connection to your people. So I really worry that some parliaments might see that as an easier or cheaper route, where in fact it's actually it allows them much less control, it allows them much less functionality, and certainly things like quality of debate tend to be a bit lower on social media and unstructured. So that's a big barrier, because obviously there are cost concerns, there are accessibility concerns that sometimes Facebook meets, but I think in the long term, a reliance on social media will be quite detrimental to parliaments.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you about this point. I was wondering about, Facebook and the bigger US tech companies in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement, and thinking about the concept of digital colonialization. Sorry about that. And that has really come more and more to the forefront. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about it and how you think it really applies to parliaments.
Sure. So, I mean, digital colonialization it's something that we should be worried about, I think, across all digital concerns, not just parliaments, but for all tools that kind of cross borders. I think at its root, there is a concern that parliaments will look at tools developed abroad and say, great, we'll just replicate that here. Or development agencies, who work in many places internationally, they might identify a digital tool that's being used in one country and see it's been successful and say, well, we're just gonna pick that up and we're gonna put it to work over here in this very, very different country, very different cultural context. And it's really, really risky because digital tools are very, very, very tailored to their intended audiences. Any kind of digital tool developed by a group of, reasonably wealthy white males in their 30s in California, I mean, that's probably not going to be precision targeted actually at the needs of individuals in Kenya, for instance, or even in the UK or in South Asia. There's potentially a lot of built-in biases in digital tools that are kind of just transplanted from one place to another without any kind of change or any user design research. One of the problems with that is that they can actually be quite harmful. It's bad enough saying, oh, well, this tool developed by a white person over here, that should be fine for you, even though you are not those things. It's bad enough making that assumption, but there is a potential harm in the kind of biases that are baked into the coding and into the design of those tools that can severely disadvantage people. We already know stories of tech that has been developed that has not worked for Black people like it's worked for white people, like phone cameras, for instance, or facial recognition software. There are far too many technologies that haven't been rigorously tested with a specific user base in mind. So one of the things that, even though it's great to kind of look at other technologies and look at how you might harness those, they always have to be kind of examined in more detail for the context you're actually going to put them in. User testing, talking to people where you want to deploy those tools is always going to be necessary to try and make sure that there aren't any harmful effects.
Thanks very much. And so I was wondering, when one thinks about the over-reliance really of certain parliaments to these social media platforms, I was wondering, what do you really think is the role of civil society organizations, such as yours, for example, in supporting digital transformations of parliaments and this digital engagement of parliaments?
I think civil society is absolutely crucial. Obviously, I'm going to say that as a member of civil society that does this. But I think civil society has had the ability to innovate and to be very agile in trying out small things to see if they work before, having to commit to any kind of scale. So My Society in the UK, we built theyworkforyou.com, which is a parliamentary monitoring site. And, we started small, we built up. It's much more risky, I think, for parliaments themselves to kind of try and innovate off their own backs when they don't necessarily have a lot of those kind of innovation skills and design and coding skills in-house. You're talking about a much bigger, much riskier proposition. The great thing is that there's so many civil society groups around the world now that are really interested in parliaments and parliamentary data and in opening up democracy. So it's really useful for parliaments to be able to kind of partner with those people, or at least use them as kind of critical friends in developing tools that are going to be able to benefit citizens or enable greater participation. So I think there's an enormous role for civil society to play there. All over the world, you've got different kinds of groups. My Society, we're operating in the UK. In the US, you've got Code for America. That network, the Code 4 network, that goes all over the world. You've got ones in Australia and Romania and Pakistan. Those kinds of little repositories in civil society of really good knowledge should hopefully be really, really useful to parliaments. In Myanmar, there's a great civil society organization running Open Lator, and that very, very small civil society organization is able to advise the Myanmar parliament now on actually, if you can produce data in this kind of format or in this kind of way, we can build all sorts of things that not only benefit citizens, but they benefit your MPs too. Because your MPs will have better records of their voting, for instance, and they'll be able to promote the things that they've been doing in Parliament to their citizens. So even though civil society is not necessarily, they're not organizations that can run all of these tools for parliaments, they can be really, really helpful in helping to design the most effective ones for citizens, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. It's been really a pleasure to speaking with you. And so I just want to say, please don't hesitate to visit our website, wfd.org, if you would like to know more about our work. And we hope you will find our report interesting.